Breaking news, everyone! After 5 years of waiting, Disney and Pixar have actually managed to make a good sequel. This duo has been on the bad run when making the next movie on their most iconic franchises. The Incredibles ended on a really high expectation for a sequel of the family facing the next big bad guy, the Underminer. But then the sequel happened and it's just him living in the first 15 minutes and the rest of the film being the Incredibles family meeting Bob Odenkirk and his evil sister. Toy Story 4 was asked by somebody apparently and was just straight out confusing how Woody, the one that has been all about staying with the child that owns you, not specifically Andy, in the first 3 movies, and even at some point ending his biggest relationship with Buzz or Jessie because they don't want to stay with Andy, literally traumatizing a child just to save Buzz from him and make Andy happy and stay with him. All of that and more is thrown out the window because he found Bo Peep. Cars 3 was a hard pill to swallow, man. As a big fan of this franchise, seeing this Subaru that appears out of nowhere suddenly taking the place of the legend Lightning McQueen himself in the middle of the most important run of his career. And even worse than that, she outruns a supercar that has been praised all throughout the movie because she got into his head and made him slow down. Not only that, but the win is given to the both of them because it's not specified in the rulebook that you can tap out and call a friend to finish it for you, so it's technically legal. Sure, buddy, totally emotional. Everybody wins. So you can see where the expectations for Inside Out 2 were at, with the most wanted sequels being boring, pointless, or somehow just incredibly unbelievable and not in the way you think. For a franchise that is somewhat kind of recent if we compare it to the other movies that we have talked about, and not only that, for a franchise that kinda got the majority of points of its universe in the first film and provided what I think is the only conflict it can offer as a story, to have a sequel, it's nothing more than the word really? But hey, it's here, I've watched it, and I really got to say, Inside Out 2 was actually a really good sequel. Now, it's not at the level as Shrek 2 or Toy Story 2 if we're talking about sequels, but it really sets itself as a really impressive way of expanding more on the idea of how our thoughts and emotions work inside ourselves. This movie's whole plot is Riley entering puberty. Now, we've all went through that phase of everything looks weird on me, I get to fit on a new circle of friends no matter what, I stink, I overthink stuff, but most importantly, everyone at this age is introduced at new emotions, which in this case are ennui, which is boredom, envy, embarrassment, nostalgia apparently, and anxiety. But hey, wait. New emotions? A character to control? Doesn't this resemble the first movie a little bit? Well, how about we take a look at the conflict? The emotions get kicked out of headquarters. Alright. Let me explain this a bit better. As I've said, this whole concept of emotion controlling their minds doesn't bring that much potential for more conflicts. It's not like at some point the emotions are getting out of Riley's head and help her win a hockey game or something like that. The big difference here is, and actually, the main part of what makes this whole movie more relatable than the first one, is that the emotions are actually replaced by the new ones. Now, why do I say that this is a factor of this movie being way more relatable? Well, as much as I enjoy Inside Out 1 and the amount of emotion moment it has, like Big Bang disappearing or Joy finally learning that everyone is important, this story focuses more on the adventure of those two out of headquarters. How are they going to get back there and bring back the Riley they once had? I never felt any relation to Riley herself because 1, I'm not a girl, and 2, as much as I've gotten angry, I would have never had the guts to leave the house to go back to my hometown, because I live at my hometown. The story inside Riley is really good, but you feel more connections to those characters than Riley. On Inside Out 2, it makes way more sense that anxiety takes over headquarters and kicks the other emotions out instead of being an accident by the emotions themselves. On here, it's totally relatable that from one day to another, you just start to feel worries about every little bit. You feel embarrassed because of something that you did. You feel envy of somebody for some specific reason. reason. You feel bored and be sarcastic about it. You even feel anxious of the way you move your arms while walking. I'm not gonna lie to you, I felt so related to that scene because I also have been worrying, like, how do people move their arms while walking? You know? And I got to say it, this franchise managed to impress me once again on how the whole world inside of Riley portrays the actions she does around everyone. An example of that is in the first few minutes of the film, when the alarm goes off and the emotion actions translate with a lot of more strength onto Riley, that even them are surprised of how sensitive the new console is, or how they represented those sleepless nights where you're just imagining the most horrible outcomes of the future. It's a super unlikely chance thing that could happen, but we believe in it so badly. We start to feel anxious of our future and how can we work around it, even though nothing has even happened and it probably isn't going to be that bad if we just let things happen and work around that instead. And I'm not proud of what I'm going to say, but they represented anxiety so well. While watching the film, I just couldn't help but relate to the things she did to Riley. Not to say that I've ever broken into somebody's room and looked through their nose to see if there's something bad about me, but nervously responding to a new group of people, redoing things over and over till I do them perfectly because if I don't, I'm not the best, staying up till late considering awful scenarios of something big happening tomorrow, or the most awful one of them all, having an anxiety attack. Let me be clear. This is not something to be proud of. The movie also brings up to the audience in the end how all of this is something bad when anxiety finally realizes what she has done to Riley. But we will get to that in a second. Another new concept that surprised me that I didn't think about when watching the first film is the sense of self of Riley. In other words, what makes Riley, her beliefs and her way of thinking, her thoughts when it comes to situations. Now, if you had the same wonder when watching the movie is, why is this not introduced in the first film? Well, we come again to the actual point of the movie. Riley has grown up and has more sense of who she is to the people around her. In the first film, she is just a kid. Sure, she has experiences that makes her who she is, but she doesn't have her sense of self. She doesn't have beliefs. That's why she finds it so easy to run away. She doesn't feel guilt because she hasn't found her sense of self, which is being a good person. And that's also another reason of why I believe this movie is better than the original. It expands more on what makes us: emotions, beliefs, deepest secrets, brainstorming, suppressed emotions. And it's going to sound funny, but acknowledging the emotions of other people. All of this wouldn't have worked on the original in my opinion, as I believe a child doesn't really have all of those worries in the world. And the ending of this movie is a really powerful message. As I've said, Riley has a panic attack, and anxiety finally realizes what she's been doing is wrong. But Joy is also in the wrong here. In a way, Joy wanted to do the exact same thing as anxiety, keep Riley as the same person for the rest of her life, a good person and a good person only. That means she doesn't do anything wrong and she's always a winner. Well, she's perfect, right? That's a good thing. Well, no, as good as that sounds, that doesn't exist. She should embrace that she has also been a bad friend. She has been confused by homework. She has been embarrassed by her actions. She has been rude to her parents. But she has also shown that she's really good at hockey. She's really good at school. And she can also be a good person. They portray Riley as a clump of good and bad decisions and beliefs, and every emotion accepts this sense of self by hugging it, because no emotion has the power of deciding what makes Riley Riley. Man, this ending had honestly me tearing up, because it also resembles a couple more messages. One of the meanings being that the emotions finally realize they can change who she is for their own opinion of perfection. It's also a way of embracing who you are, not only the good part of you but also the bad part of you. It's also a way of hugging yourself when nobody was there for us. It's a way of saying that it's okay to feel what we feel and that every emotion inside of us is important. even the hard ones. And this thought of embracing every emotion is well represented when every emotion is back together in headquarters. We can see how anxiety can be helpful by reminding us about Riley's upcoming task, how boredom takes the stress out of the situation, and there is the other emotions, which at the time that I'm writing this and recording this, I can't remember of what they did at the ending, but they did something, I swear embarrassment did something funny. But hey, let's tone it down a little bit, that whole bit got me thinking and stuff. Let's move on to other points of this amazing movie. Honestly, I really love the interactions the original emotions had while traveling Riley's head. It was something that I truly wanted in the original movie. Seeing anger calling Joy delusional just because she's always positive, or fear always having a parachute just in case of an emergency. And again, there's plenty more scenes that I can't remember while recording this, I'm sorry. The other thing that I really like is how all of these emotions actually work out in the headquarters. We can see some of that action in the major first part of the movie, compared to the first one where it's just being controlled by anger, fear, and disgust. Also, there was many more locations on this movie that represented more areas of us, like the possible career paths for Riley being represented as a parade and the actual career being giant balloons of Riley. It was also a really creative way to represent this thought of what am I actually going to do with my life? Or how about they brought back the idea of imagination land? Is that how you say it? But now it's being remodeled with new stuff like the Crush Mountain with all of the characters Riley has ever had a crush on. Or how about the pill for what's being used by anxiety to create the false scenarios I've discussed earlier. And speaking about new emotions, I think the one that obviously shines the most is anxiety. But I really like how embarrassment connects a lot with sadness and helps her sometimes to make Riley less anxious. I like how ennui was not presented as just pure boredom, but instead brings the sarcasm factor into Riley. And while I really like the design and the overall personality of Envy, there wasn't a single part where I felt like she actually did something. Sure, she has her bits, and I honestly adore how every bit from her design has the feeling of needing more, like her height, or her clothes, or even her hair, but she doesn't get a single moment of spotlight in my opinion. And even in the brainstorm bit, I love that idea by the way, the idea is produced by anxiety, even though I think that this idea should have totally been for Envy. Dyeing her hair to be red just like the other girls from the team is something that screams Envy. So by giving this idea to anxiety was nothing more to prove that she was the one in charge now. So Envy just falls onto the character anxiety relies on, but doesn't provide a single pure moment where it's just Envy. I really also like how for a brief moment the new emotions were connecting with the original ones. We can see that fear agrees a lot with anxiety because they look out a bit too much about Riley. We can see how sadness feels connection with embarrassment because, well, these two kind of go in a pair, and it's really surprising, but ennui bringing the sarcasm factor kind of connects with joy of how can they turn a boring situation into something funny for everyone. But if you think that these are the only characters on this film, then let me introduce you to what I think is the pinnacle of humor. I may be exaggerating. When the emotions get suppressed in the vault of secrets, 3 of the most out-of-pocket Disney characters are presented: Bluffy, Couchy, and Lance/Blade. This trio is the most not Disney thing I have ever seen. To start off, Lance/Blade is a video game character Riley had a crush on. Another relatable factor of this film, by the way. Everyone has had at some point a video game crush, no matter how embarrassing it is. Rosalina is a baddie. And it's not just the fact that he talks like a video game character, the way his hands collide with his own hair like if it was an old game, the angle shots it does, the pixelated shader it has, and the quality difference there is between characters is just so well done. But he is not the most impressive character there is. Let me introduce you all to Bluffy. Now, what does he represent in this movie? Well, he represents that infant show we've once seen when we were little. That infant show where the main character is constantly speaking to the children. That infant show that called out an special buddy that helped you if you were short-handed in tools.
Bro, this dog is Mickey and Pachi is Toodles.
They literally scream, "Oh, Pouchy." Pouchy. When I saw this, I couldn't believe myself. Disney and Pixar, the multi-million-dollar companies that have put out childhood classics, the multi-million-dollar companies that tends to get offended by other forms of media, I'm gonna stop saying that, the companies that, to my knowledge, has never put out self-criticism in their own movies. Those companies actually made fun of Mickey Mouse? They made fun of how the character talks to nobody. They actually made fun of how Pochi, aka Toodles, gives useless tools. They made fun of how embarrassing it is to say, "Oh, Pouchy." This movie does a lot of things well. It expands more on the universe of the human being. It portrays every emotion so well. It connects characters so naturally. It provides funny bits and experiments with the animation from time to time. It represents those awkward moments that the majority of people have experienced it but never had the guts to actually share it with somebody else. It shows us that we cannot be perfect all the time. We cannot be a good person all the time. We cannot be happy, sad, or angry all the time. It teaches us that we have to accept our wins and losses because at the end of the day, it's who we are. But you know what? This movie has one big major flaw, and it's that Joy didn't learn anything from the first movie about embracing everything, not just the emotions. If it weren't for big stupid tube that she built, the original Riley wouldn't ever have ended that far. You didn't learn anything from the first film, you big dummy. What was the point of accepting sadness if you're still throwing out bad thoughts? Also, what was that intro for the movie? Like, you know, that felt so rushed. Like, yes, you're watching Inside Out too. Now watch how Riley has grown. Wouldn't have been more sense to put that Disney Presents after Riley has grown? Hey, who knows? Maybe we get Inside Out 3 where Riley applies to jobs and learns how difficult life actually is and gets introduced to new emotions like stress or horniness, I don't know. Anyways, Inside Out 2 is honestly like, you know, it's actually really good, beyond my expectations. This movie is like literally not for kids though. I don't know why they did that at the end, like saying that message. That movie wasn't for kids, you know. 8.6432 out of 10.